Guess who's back? Back again. I am back. Tell a friend. Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? I've created a monster because nobody wants to see Hegel no more. They want Friedrich Nietzsche. That's a joke. I'm starting to record the third part of my lecture on how to read a book, and I intend to treat at least 2 chapters, 7th and 8th chapter. I already recorded 2 videos as I start recording this. But first I've decided not to start my videos with a little bit of comedy to get the audience hooked up. Yeah. And I made a good joke before the video, so I will show the joke. It's really good, I think, for people with a sense of humor. This is Athena, the Greek goddess of intelligence and reason. Yeah. This is Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of beauty and love. And yeah, so I wrote a good joke, a Hegelian joke before starting the video. Here I explain the philosophy of Hegel for those who might never have heard in an intelligible way. The first step of an encounter between an attractive man and an attractive woman, the man says to the woman, "I love your books, would you like to read with me?" That's an innocent inquiry between let's imagine 2 students in the American educational system or any other system of education. Another way of envisioning this would be a little less intellectual, I might say. "I love your boobs, would you like to breed with me?" And here I thought about a joke. If you add bees, you can call it honey. The girl, if you add bees, you can call it honey. Because bees, they produce honey. Well, a third moment, the same structure but a different content. You could also say, "I love your boobs, would you like to read with me?" That would be a little bit more... that's kind of an attempt to reconcile the 2 first moments. It's a little bit more intellectual, and the 4th moment, maybe the best, I don't know, would be, "I love your books, would you like to breed with me?" That's how intelligent couple form on campuses. Maybe they are attracted by the guy is attracted by the woman's books, but eventually the purpose is not just to read, but to breed, to create the next generation of intelligent readers. Yeah. So yeah, with that was the joke. Yeah, and here a little bit another joke. You gotta keep the student entertained, otherwise they might be tempted to drop out. My plans to make humans smart again. If you're not very intelligent, less breeding and more reading. This is what I intend to provide in this lecture. And if it's the opposite, if you're smart, that's the reverse, basically. That's a joke. 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 How to save humans? Less breeding, more reading, or the reverse, depending on the level of intelligence. Yeah. Mr. Seymour Itzkoff was a Jewish scholar. And the problem, here I explain for those who might not know, the problem with America is that the Americans, they get criticized a lot by themselves, by others as well, but because they are very self-critical. The reason why there are so many books criticizing America, or people criticizing America, is because America allows it to formulate the criticism, and also they are very self-critical. That's why they always seek to improve. And these kind of books, they do not appear in many other countries, not because the other countries are more intelligent or are less decadent at all levels, but simply because they are, most of other countries, they are not intelligent enough to understand the decline. So yeah, I've understood this. Self-critical countries, like self-critical people, they get criticized a lot, not necessarily because they are worse than the others. Most of the time actually it's because they are better, and if you are not self-critical, you do not invite criticism, which it's kind of good in a sense that you do not criticize a lot, you do not get criticized a lot, but it's bad because you do not seek to improve, or maybe you are not even aware that you ought to improve. So the Americans, they are very self-critical, which is one of the reasons why they are so great. Yeah. So, now the lecture. Which one do you prefer, Athena or Aphrodite? Why do I have to choose? Ideally, I would take both, of course. Yeah. So. Yeah. So the lecture. I'm just seeking my my pair of glasses. Okay, they're here. yeah. So the lecture. I will not show all the books. I will show a few books, but if you are not, no, I've already showed the list of all the books about the decline of the decline of intelligence and the decline of the educational system. So yeah, let us begin. So I've already recorded, as I'm start recording this, I already recorded the first part and the second part, and I follow the structure of the book. If I could talk to Athena, I would probably say, you have a very interesting books. Can I touch them? They arouse a lot of interest. Here's a good joke. Do you prefer Athena's books or Aphrodite's boobs? Well, the books, of course. Yeah, I will stop here the jokes. Yeah. So, in the first part of my series of lectures, I commented the 5 first chapters of the book with my own notes, my own remarks, but I followed the broad structure. In the second part, which has not been published at the moment as I'm start recording this, and I intend to record a few videos before starting to publish the first in the series. So in the second part of my lectures on how to read a book, I commented the 6th chapter, and in this lecture, depending on the time, I will not spend more than 2 hours. I intend to comment at least the 7th chapter and eventually the 8th chapter. So yeah, yeah. I started with a little bit of comedy, now a little bit of seriousness. Yeah, so yeah, so then I've already said this, so I don't know who watches this when, what have they seen, what have they understood, but I just repeat briefly, this book is one of the best books ever written. Whatever your age, I mean, 14 years old, you have to at least have completed, I would say, junior high school. When you enter high school, whatever country, 15 years old, one might say, you can start reading this, and up until whatever age, if your brain still functions properly, you can still read this book and learn a lot, whatever your age. It's really helpful, and I encourage people who are not used to reading a lot to read, and to read well, and even those who have been used and are used to reading a lot, if they are not if they pay attention to the pieces of advice given either in this book or in my lectures on this book, they might find enlightenment for learning to read better, maybe less, but to read more intelligently, more thoroughly what they read. So, I do not comment the books, I comment my notes on the books, but yeah. So, X-raying a book. I'll just make a brief summary. In the previous lecture, I talked about how to pigeonhole a book, namely how to classify a book. Yeah, and now it's about X-raying a book, namely to discover the structure of a book. Yeah, so about content and form. I will write a little bit. I try to improve because I have no feedback, and I probably won't have before recording the next video. So content and form are logical categories. So the content of a book is what the book talks about, and the form is the structure of the book, the architecture of the book. And Mortimer Adler says the structure of the book is like the skeleton hidden behind the cover. So there is the cover of the book, there is the content, this is what the book says, and how it is structured, how it is organized, the architecture, the order of the book, one might say. And it's like the clothes, the flesh, and the bones would be the structure. So in order to read well, one has to be able to see the structure behind the pages, to X-ray, to look at the book with X-ray eyes, namely to detect with the mind the underlying structure, how the book is organized. Yeah. And books which are not organized, which are not ordered, whose parts do not fit together in a coherent way, the full picture, usually these are bad books. They are badly structured, and the better books, these are the more nearly perfect, where the unity of the book pervades the whole. The whole is present in every part. These are other logical categories. Yeah, whole and parts, content and form. In an organic unity, that's the philosophical and also biological definition simplified of an organism. In an organism, the whole is present within each part, and the whole determines each part. It's not a collection, it's an organism. And the idea here, that's kind of serious, the German idealist definition of the word idea in Kant and Hegel and Schelling is precisely the principle, I simplify, the principle of the totality which shapes, structures and organizes and pervades the unity which pervades the multiplicity of a totality. And in good books, it is the idea of the whole book which shapes, that would be form, all the parts. And all the parts depend on the whole, and they have their place within the whole. Yeah. State the unity of the whole book in a single sentence. Yeah. So I will write some pieces of advice. When you read a book, state the unity. You have to be able to express, after having read the book, of course, after I've done the pre-reading inherent in inspectional reading that I talked about in an earlier video, you have to say in a short sentence, or no, in a few sentences, or very briefly, in a single sentence, how is the book one, if you have to express the unity of the book. Say what the book is about as briefly as possible. If you are intelligent, or if you have read a book intelligently, you ought to be able to state the unity of the book. The unity of this book in a few words: a manual whose purpose and intent is to help the reader read better by exerting more efforts and applying rules in order to get enlightened and to extract the best out of a book, in order to to gain knowledge, if I had to simplify. Yeah. Another book that I've been reading recently, How to Think About the Economy by Per Bylund. If I had to state, I'm still in the process of reading the book, but if I had to state the unity, I would say a beginner's book, a book for beginners in economics in order to help them think about the economy as a process and to understand the underlying order of the many diverse economic phenomena which affect everyday life from the point of view of the Austrian schools, which emphasize the role of human action in creating markets and the sentence is already too long, but and the benefit of free market and the problem with regulations and the way through which this method, this Austrian method, which is different from the traditional empirical view of economics, enables to give the conceptual structure which gives meaning to economic phenomena. I simplify. It's not very well formulated because, yeah, but the idea is a simple book for beginners in the matter of economics, the Austrian method, the conceptual frame to grasp the order underlying the economic market process to make sense of the many economic phenomena. I simplify. Even more simple, German metaphysics for those cognitively, no, not cognitively, but for those simple-minded Anglo-Saxon empiricists. That's a joke. Yeah. So, what kind of book is a different question than what the book is about. What kind, that would be not the form, but the particular type, the category of the book, and what is it about would be the content. And you have to say, when you read a book, what is the book about, and to state the unity, what is it about? It's about teaching how to read, and the book by Per Bylund is about teaching how to think about the economy. You have to apprehend the unity with definiteness. Yeah. You have to be able to express the unity. If you feel the unity without being able to express it clearly, it's kind of problematic. You have to envision the major parts and see with your mind how they are organized within a whole. So in order to grasp the unity of a book, you have to grasp the multiplicity, how the many parts form a whole. Yeah. How is it many? How is it one? What is simple is that which has no parts. What is complex is that which has many parts. The Greek pantheon and the Roman and the Nordic pantheon is complex because it has many gods, many aspects. Yeah, it's not simple, it's complex. It's a complex mythology because there are many goddesses, many gods, and each with its many aspects, psychological, etc., etc. A whole is not a collection. So a collection is not a whole. A whole, an organic whole, is a totality which is guided, directed, organized, ordered by an idea. Precisely, that's the philosophical meaning of the idea in Kant, Schelling, and Hegel. A house is not a heap of bricks. A pile of bricks is not a house. A collection of bricks is not a house. That which makes the house a house is the structure. Yeah. The form here is more important. The same house one built with bricks, one built with wood, and one built with marble, they are different and the price is not the same, but if the structure is identical, they are more identical than a statue in marble and a house in marble. So if you have the same marble and once you build a house with it and the other time you build Greek statues, the result is more different in a way. The content is the same, but the form is different. You have the content is the marble, the form is one time a house, the other time statues. It's more different than if you have different contents or materials like wood, bricks, and mortar, or marble, and the same structure. Yeah. A house contains many rooms of different sizes, different shapes, different levels, different uses, different outlooks. Each room is independent in part, but connected nonetheless through doors, corridors, stairways. These are the lines of connections. A well-built house designed by an intelligent architect, the many diverse and different rooms are independent. Each has its own unity. You would like to spend more time in some rooms with some people. You would like to spend time with Aphrodite in the bedroom, for instance. Yeah, that's a joke. And a good book is like a good house. It's an orderly arrangement of parts. They are independent to a certain extent, but they are functionally related nonetheless. The most readable books, like the most habitable houses, are those with the most intelligible structure, the most pervasive unity, and a great simplicity within the complexity. Yeah. Where more parts are unified and better organized. Yeah. So seeking the structure of a book is like seeking the map of a town or a city, or the architecture of a building. Yeah, it's about seeing the pattern, the order, yeah, which enable to like if you visit a town with a map, it's easier not to get lost. And the same goes with books. It's easier not to get lost in a book if you see the full view, in the formal aspect. Yeah. Okay. Now, of plots and plans stating the unity of a book. I write this in order to easier for the giving the order of the video. The plot in a book, especially a narrative book, is the unity, the main thread that ties everything together. That's the mark of every good story, or novel, or play. So here I will use logical category. The substance is, in philosophy, the substance and the accidents. These are logical category. The episodes of a narrative, one might say, a story, these are the accidents, and the substance consists in all its accidents, in a way, but it's the underlying structure, that's the structure. So we find the same logical category. The essence of a book, that's the plot, the structure, in a way. And what happens, the events in a story, these are the accidents. If you know the unity of the whole, you can put the parts in their proper place. There are only a small number of plots in the world. The difference between good and bad books is how to dress up the bare bones. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you get help from the author. An expository work may summarize itself in its first paragraph. So usually in good books, in good theoretical books, the author summarizes the story, not the story, the progression, the intellectual development at the beginning or end of each chapter. A good author helps you state the plan of his book. A statement is better to the extent that it's brief, accurate, and comprehensive. Yeah. Also, I wrote a book is different to each reader. So a book is the same. It's an objective reality. It's an object, and the printed words, if they are not rewritten by the woke brigade, the Stalinist brigade of woke people who rewrite books to change, to make them politically correct. Yeah. If books are not rewritten for ideological reasons, usually they are the same, but they are different to each reader depending on his level of intelligence, culture, his maturity, or his generation. So it's part of culture, and I wrote that's why each generation has to reread its classics. Each generation has to read the classics in order to interpret them in the light of the day and age in which they live. And Aristotle, let us say, has always remained the same for the past 24 centuries, 25 centuries. Yes, that's 4th century BCE. So yeah, he has remained the same, but each generation since the day of his life, in a way, has reread Aristotle, more or less, and each generation has interpreted Aristotle or Plato or the classics or the Iliad or the Odyssey or the Bible. Here I'm talking about the classics in the Western tradition. Each generation has reinterpreted and reread the classics, and each generation finds different meaning in the same books, in a way. Yeah. Mastering the multiplicity. Because, so, the classics, they remain the same, but there is a history of the interpretation of the classics. Namely, there is the interpretation of Plato in the 16th century, the interpretation of Plato in the 17th century, the interpretation of Plato in the early centuries of the Christian era, and Neoplatonism, etc. But there was the interpretation of Plato during the Renaissance, during the 17th century with the scientific revolution. Yeah, each that's what footnotes to Plato. Matthew Segal, the philosopher, says footnotes to Plato. Actually, it comes from Whitehead. The Western philosophy is nothing but a series of footnotes to Plato. All philosophers, that's the view of Whitehead. In Western tradition, they have just commented Plato, basically. So it confirms this, and that's why it's important to that identity in difference. Plato has always remained the same, but the interpretations of Plato, they are infinitely different and diverse and complex and sometimes contradictory throughout the generations. Yeah. Yeah. So here I'm commenting some of the rules which have to be followed in order to extract the most out of a book, about whole and parts. In order to express the unity of a book in an intelligible and sound way, the major parts have to be understood, visualized, not literally but envisioned with the mind, and to comprehend. The whole means to see all the parts. Yeah. To see the parts means to comprehend the whole. And the major parts, usually they are seen when the unity is grasped. Yeah. Each part is itself complex with an inner structure, so each part of the whole is itself a whole with parts within it, subdivisions, etc., etc. Each part is a subordinate whole, a unity and complexity. Yeah. The formula in order to identify the whole, here, that's really, usually these are philosophical books. Whole, parts, sections, points, subdivision, etc., etc. A good reader, he grasps the structure naturally, one might say, but not naturally because he acquired the habit. Yeah. And here I give a good piece of advice. I've been doing this over the past few months since I've completed the thorough reading of this book. Now, every time that I seriously read a book, before even reading completely, I write myself the structure which is outlined by the author, namely the major parts, the chapters, the subdivisions, and to see just the skeleton, one might say, the bones, so that it really simplifies and clarifies. It's not good to do this for a novel, but for theoretical books, it's really useful to spend a significant amount of time studying the table of contents. Yeah. Of course, not every book ought to be read with the same degree of effort. So the principle, the rule, the guiding principle, and the application to apply the principle, that's U and S. To apply means to singularize, depending on each book that is read, the universal, that would be the guiding principles or the set of rules. And I wrote, a good life is a life ordered and guided by rules and principles. Yeah. Animals, they are guided by rules, they obey the laws of nature, but they are unaware. And men, the more they grow and they develop and they mature, the more they become the conscious agents of the rules which govern them, because men are governed by rules unconsciously as well. Just the laws of physics and chemistry and biology, etc., etc. But there are more rules, there are also psychological, social, economic laws. That's what Mr. Per Bylund talks about. Mr. Per Bylund is a great intellectual because he expresses, when he talks about economics and intelligently, which he does most of the time, he expresses the universal laws of economics. Others before him did this, and others are able to do this, especially around the Mises Institute. But yeah, to live a good life means, whether as an individual or as a society, means to live a life ordered and guided by rules and principles. This is the development of law and right and legislation in a historical process. And that's here an interpretation, but man's struggle in a historical perspective can consist in seeking to extract, through a work of the intellect, the laws which govern the universe. That's what Newton most famously did. That was not the first one. Galileo, Copernicus, Kepler did this before him, but Newton is the most famous, and after the triumph of Newtonian science, it happened in chemistry, biology with Darwin, and economics and sociology with the 19th century thinkers, mostly Adam Smith, but then it was refined, etc. Sociology with Durkheim, Auguste Comte, and partly Montesquieu. Darwinian sociology with social Darwinism, Herbert Spencer, etc., etc. Humans, they progress towards the understanding and the grasping of the rules which guide the manifestation of the phenomena. But actually, the Anglo-Saxons, they are very good at identifying the laws, physics, biology, economics, but they fail to understand that someone who thinks about the laws of the universe, he's not distinct from these laws. He's himself an expression of these laws. So the laws of the universe become consciously expressed through the man who is able to understand and to express them. So that's a cosmic view, in a way, a German idealist view. Yeah. Also, so it's possible, go back to books, it's possible to outline a book, divide the part into its sub-parts, etc., etc. And sometimes commentaries of great books are much longer than the books that they comment. It happened with Aristotle. Yeah. Also, if a young child says 2 plus 2 equals 4, or E equal mc square, or sometimes an adult, it's true abstractly, but it doesn't mean that the person knows about mathematics or physics. That's why repeating slogans, if you are not able to explain intelligently and clearly why a sentence, whether in mathematics, physics, or economics or politics, why is it true? You are just mechanistically repeating. There are a lot of religious people, they just formally repeat whatever is written in whatever book they draw inspiration from, but if you don't understand why, if you are unable to understand why you repeat a slogan, it's better to remain silent, actually. Even if the slogan is good. Yeah. Go clean your room. That's a good slogan, but if you are unable to understand, if you just mindlessly repeat because Jordan Peterson said so, that's good. That's good. That's an example of a good slogan said by someone intelligent and worthy of being listened to, Mr. Peterson. But if you just repeat because that's trendy, it's good. It's good. But the best would be the ability to explain why it's important to clean your room. I've made, as I'm starting to record, as I'm recording this, I completed a few days ago my thorough views on home economics. So I know why. I could talk for much longer about why it's important to clean your room. But I think I've done enough. I've recorded 12 hours. More or less, of content to explain the importance of cleaning your room. So I do not mindlessly repeat. I've made an entire metaphysical system to talk about this. Yeah. So about reading and writing, the reciprocal art of reading and writing. Reading and writing is like teaching and being taught. They work together. So here I'm kind of in the role of the teacher, but actually there are a lot of things that I don't know. I teach whoever watches this outside of myself when it will be published, but I have a lot to learn. So that's You teach me and I teach you. Yeah. Yeah. So usually good readers become good writers, and good writers were good readers, and yeah, yeah. That's why. Yeah, a little bit of trash talking, uh, gentle, but there are a lot of books being published in this day and age. It's kind of good because it proves that a society which produces a lot of books is kind of a sign of intellectual health in a way, but there are a lot of books which are being published which are not really good. This book says this, he already said this maybe in the 1940s or 70s. If truth was a criteria for publishing books and not mindless verbalism, a lot less books would be published. So, it's good to publish books, but there are many books which are being published, they are not worth reading, simply. So, yeah, if people read the classics, they would acquire taste, and they would be able to judge the many books which are being published. But here maybe I'm too demanding, because it's better to read books than not at all if you live in a developed civilization, because there are people who do not read books but they don't need to. The primitive people, here that's not demagogy, the leftists, they are kind of right. The peoples who have not reached the point of civilized life, in a sense of a very complex division of labor, they don't need to read books because nature is their book. They are really empiricists without being aware, namely they have a broad knowledge about their own environment, the tribes in the Amazonian forest, or the natives in Canada, the Inuits who have preserved their traditions, or some tribes in Africa, or the natives either of Australia or the US or America, who have preserved more or less their traditions. Yeah, it's very rare, but these people, they do not need to read books in a way. But once you are within civilization, reading a book is the only way, or the only intelligent way out, not completely out, but in order to restore the disruption brought about by history, etc., etc., the complex division of labor, etc., etc. So yeah, yeah. So yeah, if people read the classics, they would read less and they would read better books, because once you have a standard to compare with, here I might sound a little bit arrogant, but actually no. But once you've read German metaphysics thoroughly, a lot of books appear very poor. And here, Mr. Byland, I keep praising Mr. Byland, because his book, spontaneously, I used to have, but I'm growing in more wisdom, but I used to have disdain for economists, but actually he's a metaphysical economist, or an economical metaphysician, I don't know, but it's really pleasant to read the Austrians, Mises, Rothbard, Hoppe, Byland, Chase Rachels, and others. It's really pleasant because they are really rigorous, and they can compete not with the German metaphysician, but in their field they are really excellent, and they are really pleasant to read. It's deductive, it's logical, it's systematic, there are no data and statistics, it's coherent, it's intelligent, it's enlightening. It's really good. The Austrians, the Austrian economists, they really produce great books. Yeah. I've already made this joke, but I don't really care about economics. Not only, but I care mostly about intelligent books, well-ordered, coherent, logical books, etc. But the good thing about Austrian economics is that not only they produce great books, but also when their teachings are applied politically, they produce a lot of wealth. So even those who do not care about reading good books, if they join the Austrians, they get wealth, they get wealthy. Yeah, but I don't really, yeah. But the Austrians, they are really. I understood this already 5 years ago, very briefly. Here I do a little bit of self-praise. I just read a few pages by Henry Hazlitt 5 years ago, and I understood that he was correct because his view was rational, logical, intelligent, and yeah. So a joke that when you love the Germans, you want to be reunited with the Austrians, but unfortunately, when you try to do this politically, somehow the other Europeans they complain, so you have to do this metaphysically. I had a good joke. Yeah. I can give the formal aspect. I intend to reunite the Germans and the Austrians, and then the people, if they have a culture, they hear this, they might say, no, not again. Don't worry. This is not what you think it means. It's even better. That's a joke. But it's really good because it's the German metaphysicians and the Austrian economists. Yeah. At some moment, the people, they might ask themselves, but what is this obsession with the Germans? Why do they want to be reunited with the Austrians all the time? Because that's a great partnership. And here, I cannot be accused of the past excesses of the Germans, because a lot of the Austrians, they happen to be Jewish. Mises, Rothbard, yeah. And they are really good. Yeah. I'm a German. I want to be reunited with the Austrians, but the good aspect about me is that I don't care if there are a lot of Jews among the Austrians, because these are really great Jews. Yeah. 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 So, the reader tries to uncover the skeleton that the book conceals. Yeah. The writer tries to cover it up, to cover the skeleton, like the flesh on the bare bones. Here, the content of the book is to the structure what the flesh is to the bare bones. It has to be the proper measure, not too fat and not too slim. If a book is too fat, that's verbalism. If it's too slim, it's very difficult to understand. So there has to be the proper balance, and the flesh is as much part of the book as the skeleton. It adds life. Yeah, because there's the structure and the way that the argument, the reasoning, especially in theoretical book, unfolds. That's the life of the book, and that's the progression which gives birth to the structure in a way. Yeah. A good piece of writing has unity, clarity, and coherence. What is coherent is that which hangs together in an orderly disposition of parts. There are well-made books and badly made ones, and according to the author, most books are badly made books because they are not written according to rules. And here I make a brief remark. As a privileged Westerner, I've had the opportunity to play video games at some moment in my life, and I used to play really great games because it cost a lot of money and I wanted to be sure to buy great games before playing video games. So usually in the video game industry, the people who complain about video games, sometimes they are used to very high standards, because precisely the video game industry, because video games individually they cost a lot of money. Usually people, they are reluctant to buy bad quality, so they focus on really the good games. So someone who is interested in playing video games as an interest, a lasting interest, usually he plays only or mostly good games. And when you play a really bad game, you notice the difference. And with books, it's kind of different because books are much cheaper most of the time. A video game, I don't know, it costs $70. A book, it costs $20. I simplify. There are really expensive books and cheaper ones, less than $10. But an ordinary, newly released book, usually it costs around $20-25. But I am used to reading really excellent books, and therefore I can notice very quickly when I read a book which is not excellent that it's not a great book. Sometimes the shock is quite because I've been used unconsciously. That's kind of one of my problems. Unconsciously, I've been reading really excellent books, mostly scholarly books written by mostly overwhelmingly Anglo-Saxon scholars and or German metaphysicians, overwhelmingly. And then when you read ordinary books written by journalists or average intellectuals, the difference is kind of shocking. But it's not to downgrade them, but simply a lot of books, they are not really, here I agree with Mortimer Adler, they are not really good. But it's better to read average or mediocre books than no books at all, because if you read a lot of books, you might end up reading good books, and the better books you read, the less you will be interested in reading bad books, so you will improve your standards and gain culture. Yeah. And here, about reading and writing, usually the great writers, here I talk about the Western tradition, they were great readers as well, because they incorporated in their mind, in their experience, in their culture, a lot of the classics, but they had standards to compare with. So usually, here also the great writers of the past, they were great readers, and they brought something new. In this day and age, anyone can publish a book, and that's a good thing, because it enables all the talents to express themselves and to compete with one another. So that's really good, because it enables a lot of talents to emerge and to shine. But it means that a lot of books which are being published, they are not really great, because in the past it was more expensive, and only the intellectual aristocracy, which was often the bourgeoisie, the high bourgeoisie, or the de facto nobility, were capable of publishing books. Yeah. Okay. About the author's intentions. When you read a book, you have to seek to try to discover what kind of problems the author was trying to solve by asking questions or a set of questions. And here I think about Per Bylund, because I've been reading this book for a few weeks now. The problem that he tries to solve is to help people get interested in economics and to bring them economic literacy. That's the challenge that he sets, how to make economics interesting and intelligent, and how to give economic literacy to the readers. That's the problem that Mr. Per Bylund tried to solve with his books. And I promote the book because I think that he succeeds partly or significantly. If someone takes the time to read his book, he offers a tremendous amount of enlightenment. It requires effort, but in a short amount of pages. Yeah. So you have to find the main question and the subordinate questions. Yeah, then there are the problems of interpretation, because in scholarly academic world, people, they try to discover what was in the author's mind by trying to read his mind, by interpreting his words. That's why some people, they psychoanalyze Shakespeare. Why not? But actually, that you kind of, if you try to really imagine the intention, really, from a psychological standpoint, it can help sometimes, but what is important is, at least in scientific topics, what is being said. Yeah. Also, about theoretical and practical questions, the kind of theoretical questions which are being listed here and which are recurring in philosophical book. Does something exist? And here a German would say there is Dasein, which is often translated as existence. There is existence. There is Wirklichkeit, that is actuality. So existence, actuality, and Dasein, they are distinct. So does something exist? What kind of thing is it? What caused it to exist? Under what conditions can it exist? What purpose does it serve? What are the consequences? What are its characteristic properties or its typical traits? What is its relation to other things? These are theoretical questions. I will not repeat them, but yeah. Practical questions. What end should be sought? What means should be chosen? What should be done? In what order? What to do depending on the conditions? Yeah, these are practical questions. Yeah. Okay, the first stage of analytical reading. The first 4 rules of analytical reading. The first 4 rules enable to get a knowledge of a book's structure. It's a stage towards reading it analytically. You have to find a leading theme of the book. What is it about as a whole? Yeah, so now I will write the 4 rules and then I will take a short break because that's the end of chapter 7. So I just briefly write the 4 rules. That's 1 hour. So with the introduction and this chapter, now I have 1 hour left broadly to make the next chapter. So when you read a book, classify state what the book is about. Parts and their relations, and finally define the problem or identify the problem. The problem that I'm trying to solve by making these lectures is to try to make the greatest amount of people possible more intelligent, so that they might stop participating in or trusting or following stupid policies. That's one of the targets, to make people smart, to encourage them to read books. So there are many problems, but first I would like to encourage people to read books, and to read books well, which the purpose is to make them smarter, whatever book they read. I try to promote good books, libertarian books, but if people want to read other kind of books, they can. That's good to read books intelligently. So the purpose is to encourage people to read books, to read them well, to make them smarter, so that they might stop implementing stupid policies. Yeah, that's the purpose. And in order to solve this problem, I try to make jokes, I try to be not provocative, not too much, but thought-provoking. Yeah, I try to make comedy a little bit at the beginning. Yeah, so that's the means that I use to try to trick people into reading books. Okay, so now I will take a short pause and drink a glass of water. Have you heard about the virus, the epidemics which sweeps the Western world? It's very contagious. It turns people into idiots, and it was developed in a laboratory called the education system. Millions of victims throughout the Western world are to be numbered. They have been turned. Into. Into idiots. Is there a cure? Don't worry. I provide the cure. Yeah. In order to avoid being contaminated by the virus of human stupidity, avoiding dangerous places like schools, high schools, academia, etc. It's good because do we see? Yeah. These are highly contagious places. There are clusters of stupidity which poison the mind of the young people, or the not so young, because the professors and the teachers, they are not immune to the spread of the disease. That's a little bit of comedy. The teaching of ignorance. Yeah. My table board, it's kind of true. The problem, I will pick up Edward Dutton. I will put the link probably about to Edward Dutton. He makes great lectures. we are becoming less intelligent as a species. The truth, at some moment, people will have to know, so I have to take the blame, so I might as well speak the truth. But yeah. The intelligent people in this world, they read too much and they breed too little. It affects, it's true, it affects every developed society. With the exception really of the radical religious communities where the intelligent people, they breed a lot, so the intelligence spreads. But in most developed society, in the Western world, but in Asia as well, the trends are that highly intelligent women, because of feminism and because access to higher education, they are encouraged, consciously or unconsciously, to pursue a career, which means that they breed. They read a lot, but they do not breed a lot. Which means that a lot of intelligent women, all over the developed world, they spend a lot of time in school or pursuing a career, and they do not have a lot of children. This is what Elon Musk talks about. That's a global problem. Because usually the intelligent people, usually, not always, but most of them, they care about more people in the longer term. So a lot of ecological people, they are really intelligent, and because they think forward, they have a broader time span, a broader view, a larger view. Yeah. Well. So, let us continue. Yeah. Yeah. I'll go pick up a sponge. I will make a joke before going back to work. Excuse me, but I think I'm a very competent breeder. I seek a partner. Did I say breeder? I mean reader. I'm a competent reader. I'm seeking a partner. The English speaking people, when they hear about me, well, I know some of them will say, well, at least he had a good sense of humor. Yeah. I can make really good jokes with the English language. Yeah. Okay. Coming to terms with an author. So, the first stage of analytical reading, which is thorough reading, is about seeking what the book is about and outlining the structure. Yeah. Here it's really important. I will spend as much time as I have to on this chapter, then I will conclude the video, but it's really important. A term is a basic element of communicable knowledge. Coming to terms enables communication. Here it's really important. A term is different from word. A word can have many meanings. So yeah. When people speak, they express words. Words, they are objective. They have an objective reality. These are sounds, namely vibration of molecules within the air. But when a word is spoken, the molecules of air vibrate in a certain pattern, and it has an objective reality, because when you, the person who watches this outside of myself, when you hear my words, they are projected, not the words, but the vibration in the microphone, which is stored electronically in the computer, and when it is published, your computer or your smartphone or whatever will produce sound as well, and it will enter. It will make the molecules of air vibrate, and it will penetrate in your ear system, which will send electric signal into your brain, and you will get a certain meaning. But the word is an objective reality. It can be measured by physicists. The vibration of air, a written word, is an objective physical reality as well. It's a certain amount of ink or a carving into wood or whatever, but it's ink on paper. It has an objective reality, a shape, a size, etc., etc. So the words, they are objective, but the meaning that thinking subjects, so here is objective, and here we have two subjects, the meaning that they attach to words is subjective. It depends on the interpretation. That's why, in order to avoid misunderstanding, it's important to clarify as much as possible the meaning of the words that one uses, and a clearly defined word is a term. Yeah. A word can have many meaning. Where there is unresolved ambiguity, no communication can occur, because people, they can exchange words if the meaning that they have in mind, if they do not clarify what they mean when they speak, there can be, and often there are, many problems of communication, because words have an ambiguous meaning. We are never sure that the content of our mind, when it is expressed, for us it's self-evident, but for the other, he receives the same objective reality, but he does not necessarily receive the same meaning, because he interprets the words through his own experience, his own knowledge, his own culture, his own views. So it's difficult to communicate. A community means to have something in common, and communication is an effort to share something with another. Knowledge, decisions, feelings, etc., etc. And here, about words and terms. Let's take the example. Aphrodite, Venus, and Freya, these are three different goddesses, three different names, three different words for the same term. Venus is the Greek name of the goddess of love and beauty. no, Aphrodite is the Greek name, or the name of the Greek goddess, or the Greek name of the goddess of love and beauty. Venus is the Roman name, or the name of the Roman goddess, and Freya is the name of the Nordic, Germanic, is the Germanic name of the goddess and love of beauty. So Venus, Aphrodite, and Freya, these are three different words, three different names, but the term, the idea that they express, love and beauty, it's the same. Yeah, and in different traditions, it's different. And the same goes from Athena and Minerva. Athena is the name of the Greek goddess. Minerva, that's the name of the Roman goddess of intelligence. Yeah, so the words are different. So if, let us imagine, a Greek, a Roman, and a Nordic German, they have a discussion. They say, I've encountered a woman, she's really very exciting, she's really hot, she's beautiful, she's attractive. What's her name? Oh, her name is Aphrodite. And the other would say, I've encountered a lady, she's stunningly beautiful, I'm in love with her. What's her name? Venus. And the Nordic German would say, my wife, she's more attractive, sexier than whatever women you encountered. My wife, excuse me, that's Freya. She's hot, she's beautiful, she's charming, she's sexy. Yeah, but actually they are talking about the same woman. Yeah. Yeah. So it's important to avoid misunderstandings. Yeah. So the importance of clarifying thought that would be here, by defining words rigorously. What do you mean? You do not have to define rigorously every word, otherwise you would turn into a boring German metaphysician. But the important words, when someone speaks publicly, intelligently, and with the attempt of sharing knowledge, it's important to define the meaning of the important words. People, a lot of people, I mean, most people, when they talk, they think that the others understand spontaneously what they have in mind when they talk. What do you mean when you talk about capitalism, socialism, democracy, justice, equality? What do you mean? When you talk about racism or anti-racism, what do you mean? We live in an age where people, that's verbalism, they express words, they speak, but very few intellectuals, here in the broadest sense, journalists, politicians, saying that politicians are intellectual. No, I mean, public figures who talk publicly. Yeah. Intellectual is not always a praise when I say this, but politicians, most of the time it's derogatory, with a few exceptions. There are exceptional politicians who are not as bad as the other because they do not participate, or they participate in the circus to try to abolish the circus. Yeah, that's what Ron Paul has done. Get into politics to try to get rid of politics, basically. So yeah, politicians, they're not intellectuals, but public figures who speak, yeah, they do not take the time to define what they mean. This simple effort to clarify thought by defining words rigorously, it helps a lot. If there is no clarity, there are only words, sounds or signs. When there is ambiguity, there is no common meaning. Yeah. The two parties have to use the same word with the same meaning. That's what coming to terms means. If this happens, communication happens. It doesn't mean that two people or more have to agree with what is being said, but in order for communication to occur, they have to agree on the basic elements of communication, namely the meaning of words. What do you mean when you say socialism, capitalism, freedom, justice, prosperity, progress? What do you mean when you talk about progress? Yeah. The miracle of two minds with but a single thought. That's what communication occurs. And here, I will kind of praise the Anglo-Saxons a little bit. Yeah. Well, not the Anglo-Saxons, but where is my handbooks about data? This is why this book is of great help, because it lists a lot of interesting facts about all countries. So when you talk about a country, you ought to be able not to have in mind all the data, but at least actually that's what I'm working on as I record this. I've spent a significant amount of time, and I continue to do so, to work on this to make things more intelligible. But when people talk about a country, that's the typical example. They have a view in mind which is, of course, connected with their personal experience. When, let us take Honduras, that's the country that I have here. People, when they hear a word, they associate images, maybe memories, sensations, or ideas, or pictures or symbols with the word, here in the case of country. So they project onto an objective reality, the world, their own subjective feelings, views, thoughts, etc., etc. But yeah, that's why there are many misunderstandings about countries, and the first step toward resolving ambiguity would be, when talking seriously, you don't have to do this literally every time you talk about a country, but at least to be aware of the most important determinations in case of countries. So for instance, Honduras, of course, it's a Central American country. This t-shirt was, and all the t-shirts, almost all of them that I wear, they are made in Honduras. That's what I know about Honduras. They produce great t-shirts. Yeah, I mean, great. The quality is not really great, but the message is, yeah. So it's a country of a population of around 9.3 million, so 9,350,000 broadly. Is populated by Mestizo for 90% approximately, Amerindian 7%, and 2% of African descent, and 1% white. The language is Spanish. It's predominantly Roman Catholic, and 46% Roman Catholic and 41% Protestant. It's one of the poorest countries in Latin America. The population is quite young. There are 5.4% of the population over 60 years old, so they have a really young population. 30% between 0 and 14 years old. Less than 10% over 55, so they are really kind of young. Yeah, I will not make all the statistics, but yeah. Yeah, there's a very high, I don't know, there is not very high actually, there is yeah, the government, there are 18 departments in the administrative divisions. The economy, the GDP is 50 billion in 2017 dollars. Yeah, $5,100 in GDP per capita in 2017 dollars. Yeah. So yeah, these are examples. Yeah. That when but actually that's the serious method. Here the Anglo-Saxons with all their statistics, they are kind of serious. I already made this joke. You think you can steal from us and just walk away? Yeah. When talking seriously, politicians, journalists, and intellectuals, etc., they ought at least to share the basic empirical data about whatever they are talking about, to make sure that the other agrees or understands that we are talking about the same. Yeah. And yeah, I already made this joke, I do it very often, but America is a country where every American has a different view of America, and every non-American as well. Everyone has a specific view of America. That's why there are so many contradictions, because there are so many misunderstandings. And my view of America, these men, I mean not these men, because they're a little bit old, but their ideas, they ought to be in the center. They are the bearers of the American ideal in modernity. Yeah. That's my compass. Yeah. Okay, so a term is an unambiguous word, or a word used unambiguously. So when the blurred meaning is kind of equalized through data or through rigorous clarification, the ambiguity disappears, and the other, he can disagree with what is being said, but at least he understands what the other means if it's clarified. So the purpose is to use a given word with one and only one meaning. Terms occur in the process of communication. The writer, in the case of books, tries to avoid ambiguity. Coming to terms is the ideal. Terms are, or a term is a skilled use of words for the sake of communicating knowledge. So it's important when reading a book to identify the important words, but also the terms, namely the ideas, in ordinary sense, the ideas which are being shared. So here's a rule of reading. Find the important words in a book, and through them come to terms with the author. In the example of Per Bylund, I have them in mind: action, exchange ratio, prices are exchange ratio, value, that's an important word, and the term, here it's subjective evaluation by acting agents to seek to remove uneasiness and to be better off. So the term value, action, which is purposeful behavior. So action, value, exchange ratio, process, sound money or good money as opposed to bad money, innovation. These are important words and terms that Mr. Per Bylund and the Austrians talk about in their books, and it's important to clarify. Exchange, voluntary exchange, medium of exchange, scarcity, resources, capital goods. I have them in mind. There are others, but I will reread the book, because that's what I've been doing for a few weeks, but I will reread the books and I will apply this rule to systematically outline the important words and to come to terms with the view. And the most important term that Per Bylund uses, in my view, that's process. He tries to explain that the economy is a process. It's not a static picture, it's a process, which means change, movement, evolution, etc., etc. The economic, the underlying order, the structure, the pattern, here that's a good example. The laws of economics, I have read the introduction, I have the introduction in mind, but Mr. Per Bylund, in his book, he talks about the laws of economics, and he uses, I think, the words, the pattern, the behavior, the order, the natural order, the structure. These are different words, but here the term is identical, so there is one term can be expressed through many words. For instance, the laws of economics, the term, the idea is the law, and the words used to express this term, it can be the order of the economy, the structure, the pattern, the underlying processes, the immutable structure, etc. The words are different, but the term is identical. And the opposite is true as well. So there can be one term expressed through many words, or there could be one word which serves to express many terms. For example, the word law, it can be economic laws, laws of logic, it can be the legislative law, etc., etc. So the word law can have many meanings, but actually all these meanings, they are connected. The laws of economics, the laws of physics, etc. So maybe that's not the best example, but apple, that's a word. It can mean the fruit, the apple. It can mean the brand, the high-tech brand Apple. Yeah, that's an example. There can be one word which expresses many terms, and one term which expresses many words. So here, for instance, when I say American, I think mostly about Ron Paul, not only Jeff Dice, but also Charles Murray, Thomas Sowell, the Jeffersonians. But Ron Paul, for me, he embodies what I mean when I speak about an American in the modern world, because there are so many meanings, but he is an example. And if you use the word American, that's one word, but if you mean empirical American citizens, yeah, and if you mean the Americans, what I call the classical Americans or the authentic Americans, namely those who are the bearers of the ideal of the founders, and the three person, Charles Murray, Thomas Sowell, and Ron Paul, they are examples in the modern world. For me, they are authentic Americans in a sense that they defend the ideas with which this country was founded. Yeah. So you have to explain what you mean. That's an illustration. Yeah. So you have to interpret the contents or the message of an author. You have to go from language to the thought that lies behind it. So the words would be, that would be the word and the term. So the language and thought. Language would be vague, thought would be rigorous, but one is closed in the other. The words are the close of the thought. If you undress language, you have to find naked thoughts. Yeah. Yeah. The ideal language, if each word had only one meaning, if there was no ambiguity in language, then the reader would see straight through the writer's words. He would see the content of his mind. That's the ideal of Leibniz. The search for an ideal language Leibniz, the German metaphysician of the 17th century, wanted to invent or to create a perfect language, a logical language, which would enable universal communication. And this ideal was carried over by Frege, another German logician, in the 19th century. The founder, the modern founder of logic, one might say, and it was pursued by Whitehead and Russell with their Principia Mathematica, the principles of logic and arithmetic, and the modern logic, which gave rise to, how do you call this, symbolic logic, which is used in computers. The ideal was to create the analytical philosopher, especially of the circle of Vienna, as far as I know, and Ludwig Wittgenstein, Russell, etc. They were after a perfect means of communicating to avoid the ambiguities of language, and for them precisely classical metaphysics was mindless babbling, because language was deceptive in a way. So they searched, like Leibniz, an ideal language, namely communicating through terms without ambiguity, and this is what has given rise to modern symbolic logic. But here that's a little bit of a history of metaphysics in a way, and philosophy, but yeah. Try to use language as skillfully as possible when you convey knowledge. Language can be and often is an obstacle to communication, but it's also the means of communicating. So it's what enables and what hampers, or it's both a hindrance and a facilitator of communication. There has to be willingness of both writer and reader to work together, a reciprocal activity, the teacher and the student. Yeah. About grammar and logic. There is a grammatical aspect to language. These are the words, and a logical aspect. These are the terms. And the reason why I've been studying logic, precisely the categories, they are what is clothed in, what is lying underneath the clothes of language. Shakira wrote a song, "Underneath Your Clothes," etc. The categories, these are the logical determinations which are being expressed through language. Yeah. And here it's really important, it's really an important chapter. Whenever anyone reads a book, it's important to focus on the terms, namely the logical thought determinations, the determinations of thought which are being expressed in the language. And my ideas here, I express myself in the English language, but the ideas that I express, when they are true, they are universal. Language is a hindrance, but also an enabler, a facilitator of communication. So there are both aspects. If language is used without thought, nothing is being communicated. That's why it's important to teach grammar and logic. I intend to contribute to the restoration of intelligence and education in the West, in the world at large eventually. And teaching grammar and logic is really important. Yeah. So here another example drawn from the book Reading. So this book teaches how to read, but the author explained that you can read for entertainment, for information, or for enlightenment. If you read this, the kind of reading is for information. It's not really entertaining. It can be partly enlightening, because a lot of data, if they are correct, it's not always the case in this book. If they are correct, it can shed a lot of light, but here this is typically the kind of book that you read for information. this book provides both information and enlightenment, and this book does not provide information because there are almost no data. It provides only enlightenment. Yeah. And a book, reading books for entertainment, I don't do this because for me, reading a good book, it's work and it requires an effort, but it's kind of entertaining in itself. I've never read for the purpose of entertainment. Yeah, so the author Mortimer Adler distinguishes reading for entertainment, for information, or for enlightenment, and the universal would be reading, that's the U, and there are different purposes, there are particular end goals sought that the reader seeks when he reads. For instance, either you read for entertainment, or for information, or for enlightenment, and all these particular aspects, they contain within themselves the universal, namely reading, but each is different from the other, and there are various ways of reading. The fundamental principles, the rules, the guiding rules, they are the same, but they have to adapt to each particular time. If you read for entertainment, you do not have to follow rules very rigorously. You do not even need to follow rules. But if you read for enlightenment, your way of reading will be much different than if you read for information or for entertainment. Yeah. Okay, finding the key words. Not all the words used by an author are important, most aren't, but some words in a book are more important than others. So when you read a book, it's important to read, it's important to be careful to words and to identify the most important words and to know which words are important for the author. Yeah. Finding the key words, or find the key words. It's really helpful whenever you pick up a book after having outlined, after having done the inspectional reading, eventually the pre-reading, identify the structure, the parts, the whole, define briefly as possible what the book is all about, what are the problems of the author, etc. You have start searching for the important words, and if when reading a book you can list, I don't know, the dozen or couple of dozen most important words, it will help you a lot. Process, value, purposeful behavior, action, entrepreneur, medium of exchange, scarcity, etc., etc. These are important words in the book by Mr. Byland, and these are words which are recurrent, most of them in the Austrian tradition. It's important to identify their meaning. Yeah. So I wrote, the media, academia, the politicians, business, advertisement, marketing, the journalists, the scholars, they manipulate words. By media, I mean TV, radio, the news. They manipulate words, consciously or unconsciously. And here, I have noticed this, and I intend to make a video later about this. We live in a world, in a Western world, where words are being manipulated because they are being used without thought or without clarity, and it's pervading, that's the whole and the part, it pervades the entire the entirety of Western society, because precisely what Mr. Per Byland talks about is that the interest rates in the banking system are being artificially manipulated because money is created by the fiat money is being created, namely the bankers, they can increase the quantitative amount of money in the economy without being connected to money being stored in the banks as being the result of value which has been created, so it's disconnected from already existing savings, from capital in terms of money. It's not these are not deposits which are the result of work and valuable work, but money is being created by the bank by writing scriptures on the scriptural money on the computer screens, or printing money, and they create money out of thin air, which devalues the existing value of the current money supply. This is what Ron Paul has been talking about for decades. So money is constantly being devalued because it's constantly being artificially created by lowering the interest rates or changing the how do you call this, reserve ratio, the amount of money that the bank has to have in its vault to pay to customers or receipts, etc. So the interest rates are being artificially lowered, which enables and facilitates the creation of money which is not backed up. So it disrupts the economy because the entrepreneurs, they receive the wrong signals and they bring about malinvestment. This is what Per Byron talks about. And so the interest rates are being manipulated, language is being manipulated, prices are being manipulated by state legislation and regulations, because the minimum wage law, the tariffs and trades and regulations, the stabilized prices on certain goods and services, etc. The state manipulates prices, so the real cost of goods and services cannot be properly reflected because it's artificially manipulated by state regulations. So language is being falsified, the interest rates in the banking system, the prices in the economy at large, through legislation and restrictions, etc., etc. Yeah, the food that is being eaten and bought by most people is artificial as well, because there are no vitamins or proteins or there are calories, yeah, but very few vitamins. So yeah, a lot of goods are being artificially the quality is being lowered down. That's planned obsolescence. There are engineers who are paid very highly to falsify, not to falsify, but to downgrade the quality of the goods that their company sells in order to force indirectly customers to rebuy the same product. That's planned obsolescence. So there are a lot of fake aspects in modern society. Yeah, so to understand a word, one has to understand the context, the passage in which it occurs. The most important words might be those that give you trouble. The most general and the most vague can give you trouble as well, because common words, when they are used with a technical meaning by intelligent scholars or intelligent researchers or scientists, it can give rise to confusion because the reader is used to seeing the word, but here the common word might be used with a very specific meaning. So here, for instance, I'll just take an example. UPS. These are logical, these are words to express logical categories. When people use the words general or specific or special, that comes from the Latin roots genus and species. When people talk about something in general, that's the common word for the logical determination of universality. When they talk about something specific, that's the common word for the logical determination of particularity. UPS in biology, that's genus, species, individual. These are different words which express the same logical categories. An individual in biology contains within himself the species and the genus to which it belongs. It has every dog, every cat, every cow, every squirrel contains within itself the species to which it belongs and the genus and the order, etc., etc. That's the logical ordering of reality. Yeah, so technical words and special vocabulary. Here I take another example. The word liberal, I know from the perspective of continental Europe, a liberal, literally, in continental Europe, in France especially, is a right-wing, a free market conservative. The liberals, they are on the right, they are free market conservatives usually, whereas liberal in the US, it is what would be the socialist, the officially named socialist in France. The word Republican, that's one word, but it means completely different things in different contexts, let alone democracy. Democracy, the Democratic Republic of the Germany, here I have to think in French, German and English at the same time. Eastern Germany was democratic in name, as opposed to the federal Germany of the West. Usually a lot of dictatorship, they adopt the name democratic because it sounds good. Yeah, the problem with socialism, communism, etc., it's usually a problem, not a problem about words, no, but the debates, there is a lot of confusion around words. Soviet Russia, the Soviet Union, was it communist? Was it socialist? The leftists usually, they say it was not real socialism, and the intelligent people, they say usually this is real socialism. Precisely. This is what happens when it is implemented. Yeah. So there are a lot of debates around words. Yeah. The important word, the terminology, the term and terminology at the same root. The important words, usually they are not ordinary for you. For instance, transcendental for Kant, Aufhebung for Hegel, attributes, modes, substance for Spinoza. I know the terminology of German metaphysicians, but Dasein, Bestimmtheit, Bestimmung, yeah. Sein für anders, an sich, etc., etc. An sich sein, für sich sein, an und für sich sein, etc., etc. An explicit stress has to be, or is placed upon certain words and not others. Hence the importance of rigorous definition. If all authors wrote like Euclid, the Greek mathematician, and the Greek geometer and mathematician, reading would be easier because Euclid defines every term, every word. And so does Spinoza. Reading Spinoza, it's kind of clear in a way because he defines every word. Reading Hegel as well. The most complex, they are also the most simple because they define rigorously all the words that they use. The Germans, Kant as well, he defines the words that he uses. Hegel, he does not only define, he shows the genesis of the categories that he used. Yeah. Every field of knowledge has its own technical vocabulary. Yeah, for instance, in Adam Smith, labor, capital, land, wages, profits, rent, commodity, price, exchange, productive, unproductive, money, etc., etc. These are the categories of political economy in the days of Adam Smith, the technical vocabulary, the specific jargon, the terminology in Adam Smith. That's why I emphasize often the importance of the categories. Philosophers are notorious for having private vocabularies. Sometimes they take words from common speech and make it a technical word. The specific words of a philosopher are those who are most important for him. So you have to make an effort when reading great books to note the words and try to come to terms or to find the terms that they convey. So identify the important words and find the terms that they express. The undemanding reader does not pay attention to words. That's the addiction to non-active reading. There can be non-active reading, but there cannot be non-active breeding. Or except for at least for the husband. For the wife, I don't know, but for the husband, it has to be active. About finding the meanings. Decipher. Does the author use the same word with the same meaning throughout the development of his thought, throughout the paragraph, the chapters, the book, or from one book to another? Or does he use several meanings? Is there a shift in meaning? Sometimes for purposes of literary expression, the authors, they use different words while maintaining the same term, namely they express the same idea differently in order that the reader might not get bored. That's what is being taught in basic junior high school. When you write, sometimes you have to make an effort in terms of expression, not to repeat yourself constantly, so to use different words. But if you repeat the same idea because it's good in a way, you have to not to invent but to use different words. That's part of writing well for the purpose of being pleasant to read. The Germans usually they make zero effort to be pleasant, except Nietzsche. Nietzsche is a pleasant German to read. But the others they are kind of boring formally. But when you read when you understand what they write, it's fascinating, of course. But the formal aspect is kind of boring. The French philosopher, that's kind of the opposite. It sounds great while reading, but the thoughts are usually kind of superficial. Not all of them, but some of them. Voltaire, that's a typical example. Voltaire, he writes very well, but he's not very profound as a philosopher. You have to find the meaning of a word you do not understand by looking at the words you do understand. You have to recontextualize. You have to acquire meaning by operating with meanings you already possess. The surrounding words, namely the words around, in a good book, around the word or the words that you do not understand, they provide the context for interpretation. In order to gain insight or enlightenment in a book, or if a book provides insight or enlightenment, the probability that it contains difficult words is significant. So a book is kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. The more parts you gather, the easier it is to find places for the remaining parts, because there are fewer. And one way of defining a term is that it's a word in place. A word in place is a term. When you view the full picture, it's easier to complete, and a good puzzle is one all of whose parts fit. And puzzling, that's a great adjective in English. To say that someone or something is puzzling, it's one way of praising, because it's complex and it requires effort of the intellect. Yeah. I will make a dubious joke. A puzzling woman is a woman whose all parts are interesting for the purpose of completing the full view. I know how to talk to women. If she asks what part do you prefer about me, you have to answer for the sake of diplomacy between the gender. I love all your parts, honey. All the parts of you. Yeah. Yeah, I would the fusion of minds as opposed to the confusion. If there are several uses of meaning without several uses without distinguishing their meaning, there is ambiguity. One word can convey many terms. Here I took an example. European, it can mean citizen of a country of the European Union. Sometimes it can mean social democrat. From the perspective of economically minded American, European is a synonymous for social democrat. It can mean a white person, or it can mean a cultural European, which is a white person with a European culture. And in this sense, when I use the word European, most of the time I specify that for me it means anthropological European, which is another term for white, and in this sense, the majority of Americans and Canadians and Australians and New Zealanders, etc., and Argentinians, they are Europeans, whether they are aware of or not, whether they appreciate this or not. America, empirically, historically, has been and still is a European country, anthropologically, and the spirit of the institution, it is universal, but it comes from Germanic, Anglo-Saxon, Germanic roots. Yeah. Yeah. So the vocabulary is about words and the terminology is about meaning. Repeating a single word is boring. One term can be, so one word can express many terms. The word European, it can mean citizen of the EU, social democrat, white, or cultural European, any really people with a high European culture, white people with a high European culture. And one term can be expressed through many words. For instance, European Caucasoid, that's an anthropological determination. Sometimes they are called white. White is the ordinary language for European Caucasoid. Caucasians, Europeans, and sometimes very vaguely Westerners. When a lot of people, when they use the word Westerner, even if they are unconscious of this, some of them they think actually white. And at some remote past, Christian was synonymous with European Caucasoid because the overwhelming majority of Christians a few centuries ago they lived in Europe and they were European Caucasoid. Yeah, so yeah. Enlightenment and insight, these are different words, but they express the same term. The book, how to read a book, teaches how to read a book in order to gain enlightenment or to gain insight, namely to be able to connect more phenomena, etc., etc. Sometimes the author changes the meaning, sometimes he changes the words. You have to be careful and to pay attention in complex books for the shift in meaning or the shift in word. So here, really, it sounds like it's boring, but it's very important. Maybe that's the most important chapter in the book. When you read a book, pay attention to words and terms. Yeah, I think this may be the most important chapter. Chapter 8, coming to terms with an author. One of the most important rules really to pay attention to words and to their meanings. Yeah. Phrases and sentences. A phrase is not a sentence. A phrase is a unity of meaning. A group of words, for instance, the king of the gods, that's Zeus in a Greek pantheon, that's Odin in the Nordic pantheon. A sentence is a grammatical unit. So a phrase, in English, that's a unity of meaning. A sentence is a grammatical unit. Yeah. Conclusion about words and terms. The comprehension of any book is enormously increased if you only go to the trouble of finding its important words, identifying their shifting meanings, and coming to terms. That's really a good piece of advice. Whenever you read really a complex book written by a serious author who has worked thoroughly, the classics of philosophy mostly, or economics, or sociology, or law, or biology, or physics, pay attention to the meaning of words and identify the important words. That's why, here I know enough, there are a lot of books published by scholars in the realm of philosophy. The vocabulary of Kant, Heidegger, Hegel, Descartes, whoever, the vocabulary of Spinoza, Plato, etc., etc. And here, in the case really, the philosopher, they can be a little bit not boring, but annoying sometimes, because I understood this many years ago. In order to understand really a philosopher, a classical philosopher, you have to get into his mind and understand his vocabulary. But that's why sometimes the same words are used by different philosophers, most of the time actually, with completely different meanings. Yeah. 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 So, yeah, that's what I had to say. That's what I had to say. Maybe I will. Do I make a concluding remark for this third part? So I have commented the chapter 7 and chapter 8. Yeah. Yeah, terms and words, they are important. I recorded videos that I haven't published, ordinary talk, where I'm realizing more and more that what used to be called a liberal in the 18th century, in Western Europe, and already in the US, or what would become the US, what was called liberal in today's world, in the 21st century, it's called libertarian. And yeah, that's a change of word, but libertarian and classical liberal, they are sometimes synonymous within libertarian circles to distinguish classical liberalism from modern liberalism in the US, which is kind of leftist, egalitarian, egalitarianism in a way. So it's really important in political philosophy to define the word rigorously, in economics as well. What is wealth? What is progress? What is justice, etc., etc. That's really for the beginners in philosophy, because this is what Plato talks about in his dialogues, to try to define the one. Actually, I haven't read Plato for a very long time, but the dialectical unfolding within Plato's dialogue is Socrates talks usually in the most dialogues, not the oldest one. Here, that's the famous joke by Zizek. Zizek said that when Plato got old, he just took characters and he let them talk without the literary aspect. In the oldest book of Plato, not the oldest, the latest book, when Plato was kind of old, there was just one character talking, yeah. But in the earlier dialogues, there was an interaction. Usually, Socrates asks a question. The person with which Socrates talks gives an answer. Socrates says, yeah, but if you say this, it implies that, which contradicts what you believe. So the other is forced to reformulate. And then Socrates, he said, yeah, but if you say this, it means that this is the consequence. So that's a constant reformulation. And by clarifying language, thought unfolds in a dialectical fashion. And that's why maietics, that's the method of Socrates to give birth to minds. Socrates, through his critical questions, his critical mindset. Oh, we already had critical theory 25 centuries ago. We had transgender in Plato's Symposium and critical theory with Socrates. The modern world hasn't invented anything. It's nothing but footnotes to Plato. And there were homosexuals in ancient Greece. Yeah. But what did I? Yeah. So yeah, that's an example of a dialectical unfolding, and these dialogues, the accessible ones, they are renowned and famous because they are pleasant to read. Because Socrates makes good jokes. Sometimes he's really comical, and that's really an attempt to define the words. And through this attempt, the philosophers or the contestant or the protagonist of the dialogue, they unconsciously or consciously undress truth. And sometimes it's kind of disappointing because there is no concluding moment. That's aporia. Plato has no answer, neither to the protagonist, but sometimes this is what Heidegger calls aletheia, namely the unfolding, the undressing of truth. You take layer by layer, and truth reveals itself in a way. That's the image in Western art and poetry as a truth as a beautiful naked woman. Yeah. You have to take off clothes layer by layer of the clothes, etc., etc. To undress. It's a process. Yeah. But yeah, so to define a lot of good, accessible dialogues from Plato, they are attempts to define the meaning of words and to clarify thought and to make explicit the implicit belief of the protagonist, and to clarify, to arrive at truth through a cognitive dialectical process. Yeah. Giving birth to minds. This is maietics. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was about words and terms. Yeah, I will stop the video here. And I will rest, and I will keep working. I don't know when this video will be published. I don't know when you, whoever you are, will watch this. Maybe it will take many weeks, many months, I don't know. But as of now, I will rest and I will keep working. And I intend to continue to comment this book. So I have finished the first 8 chapters. Hopefully it's not too boring. But not everything has to be constantly entertaining. I try to provide intellectual upgrading. Yeah. Yeah. 2 hours and 22 minutes. I stop the video here.